Everyone. Good day. Welcome to today's All Atlantic Connect webinar organized under the Oceans Coordination and Support Action, which supports the All Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance, or ORIA. My name is Tanya Lishan, and it's a pleasure to have you all with us today. Before we begin, I'd like to invite everyone joining us to introduce yourselves in the chat. Please share your name and where you're connecting from. And you are also very welcome to submit your questions at any time during the using the Q&A panel. We will address them during the discussion. And a quick note before you proceed, this session is being recorded and will be made available online on our YouTube channel after the webinar. So before giving the floor to our guest, as usual, I would like to briefly introduce ORIA and highlight how we are building an all-Atlantic community, especially for those who are joining us for the first time. Through the All Atlantic Connect webinars, we aim to strengthen connections across the Atlantic Ocean, bringing together scientists, policymakers, youth, and communities to share experiences, ideas, and inspiration around our shared ocean goals. Oops. So, but ORIA represents much more than a framework for scientific collaboration. It builds on more than a decade of science diplomacy. It all began in 2011 with the European Union adopting the Atlantic Strategy. Then in 2013, the Galway Statement was signed and established collaboration between Europe, Canada, and United States. In 2015, we saw the creation of the All Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance, and then in 2017, we saw the expansion of the cooperation to include Brazil and South Africa. And then more recently, in 2022, the All Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance was signed, and we saw the inclusion of Argentina, Cape Verde, and Morocco in the All Atlantic Alliance. Alongside these milestones, the All Atlantic community is reinforced through the Atlantic Fora, and here I mention only the three last ones, during which we officially celebrated the joining of more countries to ORIA, continue to build this strong foundation. So today, the Alliance brings together 30 member countries, forming a growing community dedicated to advancing a shared vision for a sustainable Atlantic Ocean. So through ORIA, we are building an all-Atlantic community grounded in common interests, mutual learning, and co-creation. And together we are developing collaborative projects, workshops, and data sharing platforms that align with priorities of the All-Atlantic Declaration that was signed in 2022. So currently, ORIA is working towards the priorities set in that declaration, focusing on two action areas. As you see here, the action area 1 is coastal resilience, and at Oceano, we are very proud to lead this action, focusing on understanding the relationship between the ocean and climate, and how this knowledge can help strengthen the resilience of coastal communities. Action Area 2 on ocean observation and modeling is led by NOAA in US and focus on coordinating Atlantic Ocean observing and modeling capacities. And finally, I'd like to show a visual created during the All Atlantic Forum in Brussels, held this past September, which illustrates what was discussed in the session on results and future actions, working towards the two action areas that I mentioned just before, the coastal resilience and ocean observation and modeling. It also highlights how the Project Oceano is supporting ORIA through support and governance, organization of all Atlantic forums, engagement in community, and much more. Right now, we are looking ahead to our next All Atlantic Forum, which will take place in April 2026 in Salvador Bahia, Brazil. Until then, we'll have several events and initiatives to help us build momentum, including this All Atlantic Connect webinar series organized in collaboration with Oceans20 Brazil and Oceans20 South Africa. And this is the final session of this series. I'm very pleased to share that the coordinators of O20 Brazil and O20 South Africa will be joining us later in the discussion. So today we'll focus on science innovation cooperation, where we will explore the essential role of science, technology, and international cooperation as cross-cutting enablers of progress across all ocean priorities. Um, and so finally, I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Ken Findlay. He leads specialist consultation ocean governance, blue economy, and ocean inclusive and sustainable development at AfriSeas in Cape Town, South Africa. With a prior background in marine mammal science, he has played a lead role in marine mammal research across the Southern Hemisphere. He also occupied the research chair, Oceans Economy at Cape Peninsula University of Technology from 2016 and started AfriSeas in April 2023 to consult with African ocean governance practitioners in blue economy, ocean governance, and ocean sustainable development. Curiosity, Ken spends a significant component of his leisure time photographing oceans, wilderness, and wildlife, both topside and underwater. Um, Thank you very much, Ken, for accepting our invitation. And I'll pass you the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this, and thank you for the opportunity to address the participants this afternoon. I am a marine biologist by background. I became increasingly aware, probably 10 to 15 years ago, that we were putting a lot of conservation effort towards the species. And until such time as we started looking at the bigger picture in terms of oceans economies and particular pressures that were driving habitats and species declines, we weren't going to get anywhere. And I kind of slightly shifted my focus very much towards ocean economies, ocean sustainable development, and ocean governance, because I really felt that these were the human side of the equation that we really need to address in order to achieve some of the conservation objectives or sustainability and inclusivity objectives that we were looking at previously. If I may just share my presentation. And I will just go straight. Just bear with me. I hope you can see it. And we go back one. Okay. Can we see it? Great. Thank you. And so what I'd like to really address this afternoon is what I think the real importance of fostering cooperation, partnerships, science, and innovation, particularly to address some of these really pressing questions resulting from resource use and pressures associated with what I will call the human-ocean nexus. To do this, I really want to draw on three main documents. This being, firstly, the All-Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance Declaration, centered on connecting, cooperating, and acting. I think we're all well aware that the declaration recognizes the critical importance of the Atlantic Ocean for human well-being, economic significance, biodiversity, climate regulation, and the need to address major challenges of climate change, pollution, overexploitation, and other human-driven stresses facing the Atlantic Ocean basin. And the critical importance of the reliance on accurate open science to inform decisions. So evidence-based decision-making, evidence-based adaptive decision-making in terms of the need to continually assess ocean change and to take that into consideration in policy cycles. The Alliance intends to particularly share knowledge, infrastructure, and capacity to address particular aspects, including increasing the understanding of the relationship between oceans and climate. Interestingly, at the United Nations Ocean Conference, I became critically aware that the need to look at oceans as a solution rather than victim of the climate question. Secondly, to monitor, protect, and restore marine ecosystems and biodiversity, particularly in relation to biodiversity loss, and in context of aspects such as 30 by 30. Critically, to tackle the third aspect of the kind of triple planetary crisis of marine pollution, support sustainable fisheries and aquaculture, particularly in terms of food security. I'm just trying to get rid of something on my screen here. Bear with me. No, I've lost it. Sorry. sorry, my whole screen has disappeared. Excuse me, Chair, I've just lost my presentation.
We can see your full screen here.
No, great. I thought it had just disappeared. Particularly also the coordination of ocean observation and modeling capacities, the promotion of circular and sustainable inclusive ocean economies to decouple resource use and the associated pressures. And what I think is really critically important is the promotion of ocean literacy. It came up a number of times in a series of workshops we've been holding here in Cape Town recently. And as a really, really important step. The second of the documents that I would like to bring into is what I think is a really excellent communique produced by the Brazil Oceans20 initiative under their G20 presidency in 2024, and particularly reflecting on their priority theme 8. There were 10 priority themes identified from over 100 recommendations, and the role of fostering cooperative science and innovation as critical within addressing some of these really, really important ocean issues and ocean questions. I'm not going to take the time to go deeply into these, but this particular theme really looked at 6 major areas, particularly in relation to scientific research, innovation, and this open access to data question for crucial for deepening our understanding. The next document that I would like to make reference to is South Africa's communique produced by the South African O20 team this year under South Africa's presidency of the G20. And this, I feel really, I was very excited that this particular initiative accented the moving from dialogue to action. And this was a central theme I felt as well within the United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice earlier in the year. The communique particularly identifies commitments to advancing sustainable and inclusive ocean economies, reaffirming shared dedication to ocean protection, particularly as the importance of oceans in climate stability, economic prosperity, biodiversity, and human well-being. And the dialogue, the communique really accents the need for urgent, coordinated, and science-based action to ensure ocean health and equitable prosperity for present and future generations. If we unpack that further, there were a number of particular calls for concerted efforts within the South African O20 communique under the South African G presidency, which really centered on the themes of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. These really centered on global warming and biodiversity loss through international commitments, the need for expanding sustainable blue food production, particularly in terms of food security, the scaling and transition to ocean-based renewable energy, the reduction and decarbonization of shipping emissions, the promotion of inclusive innovations and participation of women and youth in all ocean sectors. One of the really exciting components, I think, is the engagement and interaction with blue finance, and particularly bankability and de-risking of finance through various partnerships, and the need to diversify and scale investments. The identification of the risk of ecological collapse to tropical coral reefs that we've seen, or that we are increasingly seeing across the planet. And once again, the importance of advancing and expanding ocean literacy. And there were various needs that were identified, including evidence-based, precautionary, and impact-oriented policy design, coming back to informed decision-making, particularly in adaptive policy cycles, including the best available knowledge. And what I really want to put across this is the importance of shared best available knowledge. I'm thinking for far too often in my past experience in this field, I'm looking towards how ocean data really needs to be open access and shared. The viability and socially responsible aspects of projects, looking at inclusive and locally supported initiatives and employment of relevant tools. I have had a significant experience over the last probably 5 years working with the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership and the advocating of ocean accounting as a really important data standardization and data consistency tool for ocean measurement or ocean modeling. And I think one of the aspects that I really want to stress is the importance of ocean accounts is the manner in which it can integrate social, environmental, and economic components that are all critical within blue economy cycles. The need for the safety and security of maritime workers, operations, and infrastructures was identified, as well as coming back to the restoration and conservation of shallow water coral reefs. But I would argue that, not argue, but I would probably postulate, I'd like to put forward, that I think critical habitats across the board, be they seagrass beds, mangroves, kelp beds, coral reefs, deep sea environments, I think there are many that we could put within this basket in terms of restoration and conservation. In particular, how does this relate to some of the work we do within AfriSeas? As I said, I was in the academic environment. I felt that there was a need for working as a consultant, particularly moving slightly out of that academic environment into a more advocacy and advisory role. We look very closely at the human-ocean interactions, which we refer to as the human-ocean nexus that drives blue economies. And we argue, or we put forward, that these really center on resource use, be it consumptive, non-consumptive, market or non-market resource uses, and the associated pressures of unsustainable extraction, hydrocarbon energy use, effluent and waste discharges, habitat modification, and translocation. And these pressures, it's these pressures that in turn drive impacts such as biodiversity loss, climate change, invasives, for example. If we start looking at things like avian or bird flu, H5N1, it's having a quite marked impact on pinniped populations across the Southern Hemisphere. The aspect that I want to really stress in this is that the ocean is changing. Ocean resource use is changing, and the manner in which we research and monitor oceans is changing enormously. I look at what I can do now compared to what I was doing when I did a PhD 20, 30 years ago, whenever it was. And the technology that's driving that change is quite critical, because I feel it gives us access to data sets and volumes of data that we just didn't have at the time. Or historically. We need transdisciplinary measures of change. A lot of this change is nonlinear. We need to look towards complexity theory. And also, I feel we need to take advantage of artificial intelligence, both generative and predictive, machine learning, etc., within this space. I would argue that what is often referred to as sustainable ocean development, which I like to refer to as ocean-inclusive sustainable economic development, is dependent on functional, adaptive, and evidence-based ocean governance, coming back to informed, best available data, etc., to drive policies within ocean governance. Transdisciplinary ocean governance, I'm going to put forward, requires underpinning by 4 pillars. The first of those goes to resourcing and blue finance initiatives. The second being capacity development, capacity enhancement. Excuse me, I far prefer to use the word the enhancement concept there. A critical component, absolutely critical, is partnerships and collaboration in this space. And fourthly, the need for knowledge to policy to practice across environmental, social, and economic domains to drive decisions. And here, colleagues, please note that I'm not referring here to science to policy to practice. I feel there's significant knowledge that we need to incorporate into decisions that doesn't necessarily fit into the science basket. If we start looking towards some of the indigenous knowledge, some of the expert knowledge that arises out of traditional local subsistence economies. Critically, each of these underpin the other three, so that blue financing requires capacity development, capacity enhancement, partnerships and collaboration, and knowledge. Knowledge requires resourcing, capacity enhancement, and partnerships. So it's very much an integrated and nested manner of looking at these four pillars. Whether one's looking at marine spatial planning or marine protected area expansion or any of the ocean kind of decision support tools or initiatives, we strongly feel that these are really the four underpinning. And I want to put forward here the critical component of two things here again: partnerships and collaboration, and access to knowledge as important matters here. I'm particularly intrigued of how we underpin this within frameworks of global and national initiatives, commitments, conventions, and agreements. When I start looking at, say, 30 by 30 or the sustainable agenda, many of these kind of come to maturation in 2030. A lot of these particular initiatives are aimed at 2030. And I really feel quite strongly there's a need to start looking now at how we're going to position the requirements of the global south in these particular or any of these initiatives that go forward from 2030 onwards. And I think that is a really exciting space. I think if we are proactive in the way that the needs of the global south are positioned, we would be in a very much stronger position with what happens post the Sustainable Development Goals or initiatives such as these. In a nutshell, that's really what I really wanted to put across. I'd be very happy to take any questions. But one of the things that I think that really excites me is the alignment of the all Atlantic declarations and the communiques of both Brazil and South Africa going forward. I think there's a lot of common ground, and I think there's a lot of exciting space for collaboration and or fostering of collaborations and partnerships within that realm. Thank you, Chair. I'd be very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Ken. It was a really nice and clear, insightful overview of the All-Atlantic Declaration and also the work of O20 from Brazil and South Africa. So we will start our discussion and Q&A session now. To the audience, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A panel. So, like I said at the beginning, to help us connect these insights with the broader Ocean20 process and our Atlantic partners, I'm very pleased to have here to welcome the coordinators of Oceans20 Brazil and South Africa to join the discussion with our guest speaker. And so while we wait for questions from the audience, I'll start the discussion with a few questions. So first to Ken. So you briefly mentioned your work at AfriSeas, focusing on evidence-based ocean governance and human ocean nexus. And can you give us a concrete example or examples of how scientific research and innovation have strengthened international cooperation with South Africa, with the work you've done?
Thank you, Tanya. I would like to answer this in terms of global communities rather than South Africa per se. I've worked very closely with the Global Ocean Accounts Partnership. In fact, in advocating ocean accounts as a very important ocean data research tool across African countries. We've had initiatives within places like nations such as Ghana, Kenya, Mozambique, Madagascar, Zanzibar, here in South Africa. And this really goes to the development of partnership membership and in driving what I consider a really exciting manner of looking at ocean data, because I think we all know what accounts are, and the importance of standardization and consistency, and the regular formatting of accounts. We can't measure everything, but if we can measure some things consistently and regularly, we get very important benchmarked indicators that provide really critical information for informed decision making. And so, if I was to turn towards the importance of partnerships, I would look towards the role that we've played in driving and advocating the use of ocean accounts, and developing consistent developing engagements between partners in Africa, get Ghana to talk to Kenya, etc. A lot of this has been particularly within academic environments, but there have been a number of government environments, in, for example, national statistical offices, national statistical bureaus, etc. And yeah, to me, it has really opened my eyes towards the importance of what I'm going to say, Tanya, is getting people to talk, getting people to engage, getting people to, I think the critical part about this in terms of such a novel discipline is you don't really want to reinvent the wheel. You want to draw on experiences from other contextually relevant environments. Actually, to tell you the truth, if I took a ocean accounts framework from a European developed nation and try to apply it in Africa, we would miss out on the subsistence economy. We would miss out on particular. However, if we start drawing on experiences of one African country and apply it somewhere else, there's a lot of alignment. There's a lot of congruence. And I think that is really, really important.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you very much. And it's really nice that you touched, that you mentioned ocean accounts, because we actually touched on this in the previous webinar on governance and policy coherence. So it's very linked. And and I know that this is still in the testing phase, as we had discussed in the previous webinar. How do you see that it's evolving and getting more countries to work with this in this thematic on ocean accounts?
Tanya, I think the important thing here is what I'm almost going to call critical mass. When countries start working together as a bloc, or when countries start working together as a collaboration, I think you get so much more traction than if countries are working individually. And that traction, unbelievably, is what drives further traction. Yeah, it's almost yes, we are very much still in a proof of concept phase with components of ocean accounting. There are aspects that are very exciting. The new system of national accounts 2025 that's recently been released for the inclusion of or the incorporation of inclusivity and sustainability within GDP metrics is a really, really exciting step forward. How that's going to pan out, how a nation's going to kind of transform what they have been doing to a new system, I think it's going to require a fair bit of collaboration. And I think that's what excites me about it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ken. So now I'm going to pass the floor to Alexander. So a year has passed since G20 Brazil presidency. In what ways have the Ocean 20 experience changed Brazil in terms of cooperation within the country, but also internationally?
Yeah, thank you, Tanya. Nice to be here with you all and to talk about these issues. Yes, Oceans 20 in Brazil was moments of change in the perspective Brazil faced the ocean and helped other countries in these multilateral arrangements to think about the ocean in a different way. It's not necessarily changing the world as we expected. No, I hope I see that Nicole and Tammy also have good expectations on the legacy of the Oceans 20 in South Africa, but it's there. So this is one important score. We put the ocean in the discussions, it's in the documents, and this is relevant because we can quote these documents and ask for a position for the countries that are part of G20, countries and regions, because they committed to that. So it's important, but this doesn't mean that it's turning into practice, into action. And I have frustrating news about that because this year was a very exciting year in relation to the ocean. We have Oceans20 in South Africa. We have Nice, the United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice. We had the Nice to Belém Declaration. We had COP30, and there was a big expectation to have ocean flooding the climate negotiations. And in the end, it was not there. It was not there in a way we were expecting, because the nexus, ocean climate and biodiversity, is so strong, and it should be captured in these documents, in the practice of diplomats, of negotiators, and it's not there. And this is frustrating. I was in COP30 all the days, and ocean was everywhere, in the pavilions, in the zones, in the blue zone, in the green zone, everywhere. And in the end, we have some scores there, like the blue package to finance the transformation that we need, the actions. We had the the action agenda that included the ocean. We had an special envoy dedicated to the ocean, but in the end, we didn't have the ocean strongly evidenced in the final declaration. And this brings me a kind of frustration, because 2 days ago I received the draft of the Brazilian policy for the next 10 years of science and technology. 10 years, and there is basically nothing dedicated to the ocean and nothing dedicated to Antarctica or polar science, which is so frustrating, because as you know, Brazil is a champion in ocean sciences, and Brazil is pushing a lot towards ocean science worldwide. But we are not having this internalized in the processes. I think what's lacking, we are talking about that. We have documents, we have meetings, and the ocean's there, but it's not becoming a concrete action. And if it's not in our plan, our 10-year plan, 10 years plan, it will not have finance, will not have money to finance the ocean sciences and the polar sciences. And this is really critical, because in the end, what I expect is that all research councils around the world, like the national um, um, research foundation in South Africa, all these research councils have programs dedicated to the ocean, to polar science. In a way, we'll have the finance being available so that we can do that. And if you do not have science, we will not have money to promote the integration between science and policy, to make meetings with local people, with indigenous people, to congregate different knowledges, system knowledges, so that we can work on a sustainable process, or in a process to promote sustainability. And this is so frustrating. So I think the words I would like to give here, or to share here, is that we need to be vigilant all the time. And this is tiring, because we need to say the same things several times, but we need to be vigilant, and we need to keep going to promote awareness and advocacy towards the ocean. We will try to change the content of this policy in Brazil. I think we will be successful, but I would expect that it will be so easy or easier or natural to have the ocean in a national plan of a world champion nation that's so important in pushing towards ocean around the world in multilateral agreements, in processes. But that's my message. We need to talk, but we need to secure that. We need to be vigilant to secure that the ocean is where it should be. This means everywhere.
Thank you. Thank you. And then although it's like it's very frustrating. I'm very happy to see that you're still motivated to continue the work. And like in Brazil, I believe is the only country that has ocean literacy in the education program, in the national education program. So that's a big step. I hope we'll reach where um your thought. Like,
Yeah, yes. So this is fantastic, but it should turn into action again, and it should present results
hmm
in the future. So to do that, we need to commit and keep going,
yes.
and not saying not like this should not be fireworks and then nothing happens. We need to keep doing, and this is the
hmm
problem: implementation of policies,
hmm
and the same applies to other things that we may discuss later on.
Okay, thank you. So Tammy, you have your hand raised.
So thank you very much. And I want to echo Alexander's observation at COP30. We had a fantastic Ocean20 summit in Cape Town on the 4th and 5th of November, and the bringing together of over 100 people on 2 days to really discuss the challenges of the ocean and ways forward and ideas and solutions to some of these challenges was just inspirational. We all walked away from that with great ideas and some of the actions that we've started. How do we continue that and take that further? Barely 2 weeks later, we arrived at the G20 Social Summit, which brought together the 13 or 14 official social engagement groups and a whole lot of unofficial ones, such as Children 20 and Values 20. And there's a lot of energy in that room. And there was 5,000 people in this complex for the social summit over 3 days, which was a massive amount of discussions and dialogue and things. And to get anyone to understand the value of the ocean was just, it was like difficult. And we coming from a coastal area, we live along the coast and going towards Johannesburg, which is inland, and it just falls off the radar completely. And I really want to echo what Anne has put into the chat, which says we need to figure out what is in it for other people. So we went and we tried to work very closely with some of the social engagement groups, such as Youth 20, Women 20, to some degree, Civil Society 20, and others to actually, show the value of the ocean to women fishers, to the youth, to employment structures. And I think what really is going to drive home a lot of this conversation is connecting in with things like Business 20 and other avenues where you can see the value of the ocean for economic benefit to communities along the coast, but also inland, reminding people that their goods that they're getting for Christmas, the toys that are arriving at Christmas time, they're coming by ship in containers. They are traveling across the oceans months in advance. But it's that needs to really be driven home, how we can use the ocean for societal benefits or the understanding of the value of the ocean for societal benefits. And I think this is how we're going to get it onto the agenda. But it needs to be said again and again and again. As Alexander says, we can't just say it once and hope that it sticks. It's something that is going to have to be reminded time and time again. So yeah, just our impression of what we've been through in the last little while. Thanks.
Thanks, Tammy. Ken, please.
Thank you, Tonya. I have a question then for Alexandra and for Tammy. Brazil, I think the importance, personally, I think that a lot of the importance of this goes to ocean literacy. For people to have an understanding from a young age of the importance of the ocean, because then they have a formative base of an understanding of its importance. And it's a question then for Alexandra and for Tammy. One country, Brazil, has ocean literacy within its formal curricula, is what I'm hearing. Does that drive particular interest or particular background knowledge in the ocean space? And then, Tammy, a similar question. How do we then advance this sort of philosophy within South Africa. Because I think it's an absolutely critical component of if people from a young age understand the value and the importance of the ocean, there's a respect for the ocean, and there's, I feel, an ease of which you can then sell at a later stage, at an adult stage, the ocean message. Let's put it that way. But I'd be interested to hear whether that translates in Brazil through a curriculum. Thank
you. Yeah, thanks, Ken. We have a commitment. Brazil committed to have ocean literacy in the curricula, and it's moving towards that. It's not easy because you need to have materials, you have to train the professors, the teachers, the school teachers. You need to do a lot of things to have facilities to do that, and it's ongoing. And the results we hope to see in some years. But now we need to talk to the decision makers that are not young anymore. And sometimes they just forget that the ocean should be part of. And most time we don't need to have a dedicated chapter on ocean, but we need to see all the ocean in all the chapters because it has a transversal importance and role in changing society and so on. So that's the point. We don't need to wait for the implementation of ocean literacy in our curricula because it's so urgent that we need to change things now. And the way to do that is through, in my opinion, through awareness raising and advocacy and being vigilant all the time. It's tiring, but we need to do that. Only it's upon us to do that. So let's do that.
So within South Africa, we do have we do now have a subject called marine science, which is offered at grade 10, 11, and 12 level. But to the best of my knowledge, it's only offered in 7 schools. And these are coastal schools, they're not inland. Some schools you can, or some students are able to do it as a 7th subject or an extra subject if they would like to from time to time, but it's not enough. And I fear that the teachers that are teaching, they will have a science background, most generally, but do they have enough of an ocean science or a marine science background? So I think initiatives to try and bolster their knowledge, bolster their skills would be great, and just spreading that more readily. But I think it needs to come in at earlier grades already in geography, within sciences, biology, things like that. And so it does need, curriculum itself probably needs a bit of a shake-up. Who does it, how it gets done would be great within the different countries. But I'm going to hand over to Nicole, who's got some more to add on that.
Thanks, Tammy. Thanks for the question, Ken. So maybe just to add to what Tammy has said, within SAON, we're also a member of the Blue Schools program. I believe that was also run up through the AORIA platform. So that I think it started quite small, but at the moment this is now including a number of schools across South Africa, both coastal and inland. They had an incredibly successful summit that they themselves had, where they brought all the schools together, did a bit of a competition. There was a lovely video that they had created under that as well. And now we are actually trying to transfer this model to the Indian Ocean. So we're part of the Indian Ocean Rim Association, and to try and get those countries engaged. I think we will probably have that as a pilot across a couple of countries and then see how the interest is to grow that to all the other member states. But also to note that Seychelles has also kind of started this ocean literacy journey. They've also developed a curriculum for 11 to 12-year-olds. I think that is maybe, I think, grade 3 or grade 4 within Seychelles. And so I think the ocean literacy component is definitely growing. I mean, I think it's one of the key calls out of the Ocean Decade. It is certainly one of the key priority areas for the African Decade Task Force to implement and roll out. So I think that we're going to start seeing potentially, as I see in the chat, a charter for ocean literacy, and that I think is certainly something that we can work towards. And I think from, what Tammy said, going to the G20 Social Summit, where we saw that connection with the ocean, where people are like talking about climate, but not understanding the ocean's role in climate regulation, and understanding why we are putting so much money and effort into ocean observations. I think that, yes, that's definitely a message that we need to shout from the rooftops, as why this is so important and why we need additional observations and funding for that. And I think that potentially next year we will try and make that, I think, a key focus. We said from dialogue to action, and I think it's now incumbent on us, having put that forward, to ensure that when we put out the call for ocean actions, that we continue to leverage that, despite the presidency having moved on and handed over, but that we don't hand over, the work that we started within South Africa, to continue to drive that within our existing programs and institutionalize all of that within what we are doing. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for Ken for the question. Thank you, Alexander, Tammy, and Nicole for your insights. And I just want to comment that this Blue Schools initiative in ocean literacy, I see that it has happened in our generation. So I think we will see. I mean, I believe that we are starting to see some results, but maybe the really good, solid, and action will start coming in the next coming years because all these students are taking all this knowledge and maybe passing on knowledge to their families as well. So I think we'll start to see. It's motivating. And now that and thank you, Tammy and Nicole, for actually mentioning all the South Africa activities within Ocean 20 South Africa and the G20 South Africa presidency that just recently ended. Maybe you could briefly introduce the Ocean Communiqué that was released, well, last month. Just
I know it's already been a month. What I can do is just quickly show everyone our webpage as we have it at the moment. So this will stay live because it will be it's a part of our institutional webpage. So we are very happy to say that this will stay open. And everyone is welcome to go and have a look. I can put the web address into the chat just now.
space.
So what we have got here is the communique, the Ocean20 South Africa communique itself, right on the front page, but also the G20 Social Summit Declaration. There is supposed to be, because the declaration itself is only 4 pages, and we had, as I said earlier, we had 5,000 people, all this input from 14 plus social engagement groups. So you can imagine that what's here is definitely not all of what was said. And they are working, the presidency itself, the group that put together the social summits, were working in the background to have a larger document that captured more of the discussions and just some of the information that was put forward. And as soon as that is available to us, we will add it to our webpage. So these two documents are available now to go and have a look at. And, we were quite proud of all the logos that came out of G20, the Social Summit logo, as well as our own, and the representation of the protea. So the king protea, for those that maybe don't know on this call, is a flower. It's quite a large flower that actually blooms here in the Western Cape in Cape Town. And it's very unique for this region, the protea and the fynbos, or what we call fine bush. It only occurs in the Western Cape in the whole of the world, so it's very unique. And it's because of the unique ecosystem of the ocean around us, this cold ocean current that comes past us along the west coast up towards Namibia, and the warmer Gullis current down along the east coast. And it creates this wonderful, eco great big climate nexus, as it were. And it causes our blooming protea flower. And so to have this as part of the G20 logo, we adopted it almost immediately within our own Ocean 20 logo, because it's so unique and because it's so special, because of the climate of the Western Cape. So we were very proud of that. The other things that are available on our websites is all of our reports, our newsletters, but also very importantly, the briefing notes. So we had 9 briefing notes that we developed as part of the communique. These are all within the communique itself. And these looked at energy security in the ocean, how to finance a sustainable ocean economy. And I'm happy to note that from the Nice, just prior to the UNOC in Nice, they had the BEF, Blue Ocean Finance Forum. But there's a number of tools, a number of initiatives that are starting to come out that looks at how to finance the blue economy, but also how to encourage companies to get involved and different multinationals. So this is quite encouraging to see. That's the one thing that's come out of this year. The maritime transition, which looks at how do we advance green shipping in line with what the IMO had put forward. Developing an MCDR framework for the ocean, an ocean literacy briefing note, which just looked at some of the successes, but also ways forward. How do we really tackle some of the ideas? Blue foods, and we looked a lot at subsistence fishes and fisheries, accessible technologies, open source accessible technologies, how we can progress this work. We put forward a precautionary pause on deep sea mining, which of course was not popular with a lot of countries, not most countries, and very popular with a lot others. So it is a very divisive briefing note. And then finally, a river to ocean water flows. And this looks a lot at inland and actually connecting to those communities that are living on riverine systems that have blue aquaculture, but don't realize the downflow of their activities and things to the ocean. And then Nicole, along with the O20 social engagement group, led a paper looking at empowering women in small-scale aquaculture. So really trying to bridge across those social engagement groups themselves. So you're welcome to have a look. We've included some of the other when we represented at the third Sherpa meeting. And we'll keep adding to this particular website as we go forwards, and what we've been doing in South Africa. So I don't know, Nicole, if there's anything you'd like to add to that at the moment.
No, I think you pretty much covered everything, Tammy. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Nemi, for walking through the Ocean20 South Africa website and briefly touching on all the activities during the South Africa presidency. So, what I see that there's some engagement in the chat, which is really nice, but I don't see any question. So I think I'm going to ask one last question and to Tammy and Nicole. Since you have led the Ocean20 efforts and you are also part of the ORIA, could you briefly share how this theme aligns with today's discussion on science, innovation, cooperation, and mostly for the All Atlantic community? Any of you?
Yeah, okay. I can go first. No, I mean, I think that there is definitely some alignment. When we took on Ocean20, we tried to look at what were our strengths, and ocean observations, biodiversity monitoring, ocean modeling. Those are all areas that SAON is quite strong in, and so we try to bring that in. And then also looking at AORIA, that inclusion of coastal communities, that was also a very key area. And so one of the things that we looked at was that innovative technologies, looking at low-cost sensor development, for coastal resilience, and those were all areas that we kind of tried to touch on and see where can we strengthen those linkages. So everything that we did was, how can we look at our existing science diplomacy programs and really pull into that? And so AORIA was one of those platforms. I think there were a lot of linkages, the briefing notes that Tammy showed, for policy recommendations that we can pull in. Of course, there's going to be a lot of work around the early career professional development, which we did throughout the year, and continuing to support that through the AORIA intergenerational dialogues. And I saw that there was a call for the hackathon coming out. So again, innovation is very key. That's definitely something that we are trying to develop more. And so those are all areas that we will be looking to support bringing into this. So I think there was a lot of collaboration as well, and the support from Oceano and the AORIA Forum in the workshop that we had looking at coastal resilience when we had our Ocean20 launch. I think that just really set the stage for all the engagement throughout the year. So we are certainly looking forward to see how we can take all these collaborations forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Nicole.
And just to add on to what Nicole said, right from the start, our president was very strong in that this needed to be a G20 for Africa. It's the first time it's been on African soil. It's not going to come around to us for another little while. I'm not sure if the AU is going to get that opportunity as a member of the G20 to host soon again. So we really wanted to make sure that we're connecting in with other African countries. So we took a lot of the work that we've been doing with accessible technologies. We hosted workshops here in South Africa, but also in Kenya through the YOMSA, and we're looking to try and strengthen that work through some of the other initiatives that we had already been undertaking, but had this opportunity to then strengthen out into Africa. But then building South-South collaborations with Brazil. And these have actually strengthened over the year, which has been absolutely lovely. But strengthening collaborations with other countries in the South. So we're looking forward to continuing on with that work because I think we have a great opportunity in this way.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's really exciting that there's still a lot of work and ahead. Ken?
Thank you, Tanya. A question for Tammy and Nicole, and congratulations, guys. I think the briefing notes are really outstanding. I think it's a really great kind of grouping of a number of diverse areas of ocean needs and requirements. How does one then get, I mean, okay, so O20 is a social engagement platform. And it's really, maybe I'm wrong, but I see it as kind of the voice of civil society and civil engagement group to advance particular thoughts, particular ideas, philosophies, etc., to G20, which is fundamentally an economic forum. How does one get those briefing notes, those communiques, etc., noticed and incorporated within the G20 decisions? Because I'm concerned there's a little bit of an impasse in terms of some of the social engagement groups and the actual decision-making within the political side of G20. How do we bridge that gap? I might be wrong, but that's just my kind of my interpretation. Yeah.
No, and this is the fundamental difficulty, I think, and it's not honestly not just us. Being the only Ocean20 at this stage is the only environmental group. The rest are all more civil society related. So when we talk about unemployment or you talk about youth challenges, it's more readily understandable across the conversations of the G20. So it was challenging. It's definitely a challenge. And I think it comes back to G20 is primarily a financial economic system. How is the ocean important in terms of finance. And I think that's the key way to get those decisions on. So when we went through the G20 declaration that Cyril Ramaphosa put out, and you scroll down the 30, I think it's 30 odd pages, and you get to point number 100 is the first time the ocean's mentioned. And it's mentioned there in respect of, I actually don't have the wording right now, but how it can be strengthened to look after economic value, basically. Um, and this is where it's important. Yes, they have a kind of understanding with climate, but I think that's where we really need to push in coming years to really get people to understand the value. It's not just tourists going to the beach and having a grand old time during their holidays. It's more than that. And I think we really need to push that rhetoric, and bring it down to pennies and pounds, basically, in terms of making it. But what we did do, we sent our communique to the Sherpas. We sent it to our environmental engagement groups. We sent it through the DSTI and DFFE to as many people as we could. And we hope that it was put out there, but much more than that, we did what we could, unfortunately.
May I, Tanya?
Thanks.
Yes.
No, I think this question is really important. And we need to consider that we, people that worked here in Brazil and people that worked in South Africa, we are a kind of heroes because we have our lives, our jobs, and then we decided to try to support the discussions within the O20 umbrella, within G20. And this is complicated because compared to the other groups of engagement, they are well structured. They have institutions within each state, like science, S20. We have the Brazilian Academy of Sciences in Brazil and in other countries, and they have the role to discuss that. We do not have that for the ocean. And that was one of the legacies we would like to have based on this process in Brazil and South Africa to create a community and to create a process so that we can have a more structured way to be present in G20 and in the future. So Oceans20 was formerly born in Brazil. It's growing in South Africa. We have US next year, and we hope Oceans20 will be there, perhaps with the focus on economy, and then we will have UK, and then we need to keep pushing so that we will have a better structure in the future, so that we would have perhaps people dedicated to give support to the ones that will be leading this process. And we in Brazil, we didn't have in South Africa this support. It was very similar to Brazil, and we, like I said, we worked very hard, Tami and Nicole. So we did our best, the best we could with the conditions we had, and let's keep pushing this so that we will have different situations in the future. That's my message of hope.
Thank you for Alexandra. Just Tami, sorry, Tanya, I just want to put forward, I'm not at all knocking the endeavors of the people who've been driving this. It's just how to get the uptake from the political side. Yeah. Thank you.
Nicole.
Thanks. And maybe just to add to that, also building on what Alex has said about legacies. So the G20 is only for a year. I think for a lot of people, they only really start picking up in like January, February, in terms of escalating activities. And so it doesn't really leave you with a lot of time to make a lot of impact. I think for us for this year, what has really come out of it was the networks and the people that we met throughout of this. And so within that, so the G20 is one space, but being able to leverage the relationships that we have built during the year into other platforms, I think now becomes quite important. And being able to kind of like take our different messages and recommendations into different platforms so that hopefully, in 5-10 years down the line, there is now actual, I think, synergy across different platforms, economic platforms, social platforms, scientific platforms, and then you kind of create that, I think, groundswell of intention for, incorporating the ocean. So I think, as Alex said, we just need to be mindful of that as we continue the work, and utilize all the opportunities that we can to provide this input. I think we've got amazing recommendations that came out of Brazil. We tried to build on that from South Africa, and to just kind of keep pushing that, because we know what we need. It is really just the implementation that we need to accelerate. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay, so well, thank you very much. It was a really nice discussion. I don't see any question on the Q&A panel. So and I know that Alexander needs to maybe go. So I'll just end the panel discussion if you don't have any more insights. Okay, so I'll thank you very much to the audience. Thank you for participating, for attending this session. Thank you very much to Ken for accepting our invitation to present. Thank you, Alexander and Tammy and Nicole, for coming back to the webinar and really provide really good, insightful feedback to our discussion. And so we will end this series. Thank you. For those who have not seen our, who have not attended our past sessions, just to let you know that all the recordings are available on the All Atlantic YouTube channel. So thank you very much.
Oh, and thank you for you, Tanya. Thank you for organizing this and taking care of the oceans within the G20. Thank you for Oceano, Aurea. You are very supportful, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Alexander.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for the
everyone.
opportunity.
Thanks, Tanya. Thanks, colleagues.
Bye.
Bye.